Everybody, it's Tara Thomas Getman. This is a fun live interview we have for you today. Joining us is Josh Fleming. He's originally from Florida, but decided to head to the Midwest, where he has now been very involved for years in marketing opportunities that have put him on the level of an award-winning marketer. And he's currently a vice president for marketing with Bank Iowa, based in Des Moines. Josh, I just have to ask right out of the gate, when you think about marketing and banks, some people are like, oh, that's not as exciting as selling some, product or service that's going to go viral. So just talk about how you bring that excitement into the banking world when it comes to your marketing prowess.
Well, thank you very much first for having me. Second, to answer your question, I think banking marketing when you're considering where it ranks among sex appeal is probably right there with insurance. So if you think about what Geico and Progressive have done with their insurance advertising, and even that legal emu stuff that's out there, it's differentiating. And so what I wanted to do when I got to Bank Iowa, and I asked during the interview, is can we push the line? Can we push the envelope a little bit here in what we do from a marketing standpoint? Because I don't want to be just like every other bank. And so they were on board with that. Some people internally were a little bit surprised because bankers have done things the same way for 30, 40 years, and why we're going to change it now. And so it was an adjustment for them as well as for me. But really, I kind of live with this mantra that bank marketing doesn't have to be boring. It should differentiate, and my team has kind of brought that onto their mind. They practice that all the time. They always try to see how far we can go.
Well, it's wonderful that your vision has been successful, because during your time at Bank Iowa, you've secured multiple awards from the American Marketing Association. Can you give us an example of some of that material, that branding and promotional content that secured these awards of recognition for your thinking outside of the box approach?
Yeah, I think my favorite campaign, if you will, is we noticed that we had a really older demographic than we wanted. And I am that age now. We want we want younger people that are going to be with the bank for a long time. But I think our average age was 49, 50 years old. I'm 48 for full disclosure here. And we wanted to get a little bit younger. And so one of the ways we wanted to do that was we put together a campaign for our young account savers. The idea being that if you open up an account for someone 18 and under, get them started on savings, not only will you maybe get them longer term, but you might also get their parents as well into the bank, meeting our folks. So that was kind of the goal and the attempted strategy there. And so we wrote a children's book called Eleanor Saves the Day. And it was about a young girl who, like most young kids, have a lemonade stand. And she learned the value of savings through that. But then, you kind of see Eleanor get older. She ends up, getting laid off from a job, which has happened to the best of us, or the worst of us, if you will, at some point. So we wanted to keep it honest and real. And so when she did lose that job, she, remembered all of her savings that she had throughout the year, and was able to get her own startup off the ground and going. And so it was just a really fun approach. We ended up opening, I think, a 1,200% increase in young account savers during the campaign, reduced the average age of Bank Iowa customers by 2 years. And so that's probably my favorite campaign. Plus, it was really fun. We worked with an illustrator to, really bring it to life, and he helped me co-write it. And I think my kids appear in the center spread. The artist did me a favor. And so if you know my kids, you can look at the center spread and see, hey, there's Everett, or, that sort of thing. So.
I love that. That's a great touch, and something that obviously means a lot now that you've been recognized for it by among your peers outside of banking and in the marketing association halls, if you will. So let's talk about, you mentioned that data point. You had, an incredible return on investment for that campaign, so to speak, securing, hopefully, it sounds like lifelong customers. When it comes to data, how does that drive some of your decision making? In our experience with our company, LIFT, data and research has been sort of our bread and butter to offer those unique insights. And so that's how we came to know of you and your work with Bank Iowa. Just tell us a little bit about how that data process drives marketing.
Well, I think the nice thing about data is it's really kind of hard to argue with. You know, if you work at a bank, I work most of the time when I'm not working with my team with people that aren't marketers. You know, there's mortgage director, there's a head of retail, there's the compliance director. But if you have data to back up your assumptions and what you want to do, it makes it pretty easy to kind of give a head nod to move forward. When I got to Bank Iowa, I didn't really know that much about Bank Iowa. Actually, I thought they were part of like the Iowa Bankers Association. I had a buddy that had been here, so I didn't know much about Bank Iowa, nor had I seen their marketing. And so the first thing we did was a brand awareness study. We went out and surveyed with LIFT's help the folks in the counties that we served. And so there's like a two-sided story to this, right? So the good news is the people that knew of Bank Iowa absolutely loved us. They thought we were trustworthy, loyal, skilled. The bad news was that only 9% of the people in the counties we served knew who we were. So as a bank, that's a problem. But as the new marketing guy, there's like really nowhere to go but up. You know, how can you fail at this? And so over the years, we've been measuring the brand awareness, putting together media plans specifically structured to build brand awareness, mostly through radio, television, are kind of some of the stronger mediums to do that versus say like a newspaper. We still run traditional newspaper. We just use it specifically for rates or promotions or something like that. But when we're trying to build brand awareness and then measure it, it has a domino effect because everybody at the bank knows that we're trying to build brand awareness, and that's why we're on there. And we even have like I had my CFO ask me the other day, he's like, "Hey, I was reading that television increases brand awareness. We're gonna run some TV ads this year." And so, leadership and the C-suite talking about brand awareness, it's a win. And so, it's been nice to be able to kind of have numbers that we can show that what we're doing is working. Because a lot of times marketers get very little credit. It's okay. We kind of take it quietly and say, yeah, we know that we've contributed to this, but it's really hard to say that we ran this radio spot and 10 people opened accounts. We can't really do that. A little bit more with digital, and that's where that data comes in. But when you can show that brand awareness has increased somewhere between 15 to 20% over the last 5 years, and for non-marketers, that number doesn't seem big, but even like a 1 or 2% lift every year is fantastic. But we've been able to do that with a dedicated marketing plan and data that shows this is actually working.
That's impressive. And I appreciate you explaining that because as you describe, a lot of times with marketing, the return feels like sort of taking shots in the dark insofar as not really having sort of that data to back up everything that you're pouring into it. And in this case, it was a unique marriage between your work and, as you described, this marketing plan as a guide with what our research team is doing with so many different sectors across multiple industries. Why would you, to push this data conversation one question further, why would you encourage other companies to consider that kind of deep data dive to not only obviously give them some insights into what is or isn't working, but to, as you describe, really drive that future looking push for brand awareness and marketing to hook and ultimately improve profits by bringing in so many more potential customers?
I think having leadership understand, and by leadership, I'm talking about my peers as well as those that lead me, understand what you're trying to do, why you're doing it, why it's important, is hugely important. I mean, most of my career prior to this job, I was in ad agencies, and I was working for clients, and I never understood why they didn't have time to hear my latest greatest idea. It's because they were busy talking to compliance and the retail director and the mortgage director and all the other different departments that need our help. And so when you have a clear vision of what you want to do, you have data to support it, you get respected and you become trusted. And so to me, that's everything. So it allows me to be more successful. It allows me, when I do have that harebrained idea, well, does data support it? Or do our clients actually want it? Is this actually a problem? Yes, it is, and I can quantify it for you. Is great. And I think the other thing about brand awareness that I just want to mention here is, if I asked if you wanted to switch banks, you don't want to because it's a pain in the butt, right? You got all your auto pays, you got all the bills that you pay Mid-American every month for your electric or what have you. And the idea of moving over all of that and making sure you got enough money in its account to cover the mortgage, it's a mess. And so a lot of banks try to educate people on why they should move. And I can give you plenty of reasons why. We have better technology and better service and people and all that sort of thing. But we really want to be the second choice bank for everybody. So if you are with your current bank and you're happy, great. But if you have any inkling that you're ever going to want to move, or they annoy you enough or make you mad enough with those $14 a month fees that you never signed up for in the first place, we'd like to be top of mind for you, right? So 8 to 12% of people switch banks, consumers switch banks every year, which means what, 92 to 88% roughly is wasted advertising dollars. So brand awareness says, hey, if you do get mad enough at your current bank, we'd like to be in that consideration. And that seems to have worked for us.
These are great points, and I appreciate all the data that you're sharing to back it up. It's been really interesting to hear these insights. When we think about the future of brand awareness and the competition because of the information overload that we're constantly competing against when it comes to just trying to stand out and have a presence, what do you see as some of what your kind of the way that you're approaching it? I like it, is to say, hey, I want to shake things up even when people maybe aren't prepared to move the needle. What's on your mind that you're excited about, or that you're seeing trending that you guys will likely jump on because you're somebody who likes to be out front with these things?
Yeah, we are looking at TikTok right now, but I don't know necessarily that that's a great brand awareness opportunity for us. It's certainly a good younger audience opportunity for us. As you've probably seen in the news, government in Iowa has shut down TikTok for all government employees. So that's not necessarily the greatest news for those looking at TikTok. But as far as I know, there's no other banks really in Iowa that are on TikTok. And what could we do enough to be interesting on TikTok to keep a 19-year-old's attention long enough? And I'm on there. I'm not posting videos of me doing this sort of stuff. But I mean, I'll scroll through there just to see what's happening. I think, as we continue to get more fragmented, it's going to be harder and harder to keep brand awareness going in an upward trajectory. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm trying to make sure that makes sense. But for the first 5 years here, really, it's been about building brand awareness. And now that we've got our message figured out, which was done through a lot of research and data collecting, to get to a brand position. Now that we have that figured out, and we have kind of all of our, structural things in place, the website's on brand, our marketing materials are all consistent. Now it's time to get a little bit more granular. So while brand awareness will still be important, we're looking at ways now to kind of move the needle more specifically, to be able to say, we're going to run this digital campaign. We expect it to generate 110 accounts within the next 3 months, and here's how we're going to track it. Because some of that other stuff is necessary, but if we can get a little bit more specific, like I always say, the first 5 years here have been really kind of block and tackle, and now we want to run some trick plays, I guess, if we're going football references.
I love it. That's a great way to describe it. If you're just joining us, I'm Tara Thomas Getman with LIFTu Live, our weekly interview series. A fascinating guest this week, Josh Fleming, VP of Marketing out of Bank, Iowa, Miami, Florida transplant, growing his life or raising a family in Des Moines, Iowa. And I appreciate with 5 children that you're very well versed in the social media scape and understand some of those TikTok dances better than the average person, right? So I have to ask you, Josh, when you think about the way that, as you described, the digital landscape has sort of changed the game, looking back over your years, you've had quite a varied experience, even being part of, you mentioned to me off camera, a startup for years in Des Moines. How has the internet hurt some of the process of brand awareness? Because we now see a Google review perhaps being the first encounter somebody has with a company, or even a logo. When they do a Google search, they see maybe that immediate negativity. How do you factor in some of that inability to truly make a first impression competing with all of these keyboard warriors? How do you bring that into play when you're making these marketing and branding decisions?
Yeah, and it's twofold, because you have to build what I like to call a store of goodwill, and it's an expression that's rather it's been around for a while. But if you think about like Toyota, right? Remember 10, 11 years ago, they had that problem with the pedal. The pedal was
Yeah.
getting stuck and people were having accidents, right? And then a couple of years ago, Volkswagen had that emissions thing, right? It was much worse for Volkswagen's reputation as well as their sales, and a PR hit, because they weren't as beloved as Toyota, right? So Toyota was able to survive that. It's like, oh, it's okay, it's Toyota, it's all right. And so we want our brand to be loved, right? And so the content that we create, the story that we're telling, not only through the digital means, but also the people in our smaller, community banks that are face to face out there are telling a good story. We had a interesting story. I can't get into too many details from a security standpoint, but basically there was a coin counter machine that sounded like a gun had gone off when it was being counted. This happened about a week or two ago. Facebook blows up. I can't believe this place. I'll never go back to this place. This place shorted me $4.80 or whatever it was on the coin count. And this person was sure they had counted, correctly. Um, and so we kind of sat back and said, let's just see what happens, right? And so you've got all these Bank Iowa customers that are coming to our rescue. So I don't even have to say anything on behalf of the bank, or anything like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have had that foreign object in your coins, which made it sound like a gunshot. It made the whole machine smoke and created quite a scene in a small town bank. We had Bank Iowa customers come on there and say, I love this bank. I've never had a problem with this bank. I've been there 15, 20 years. Everything's great. And so I think building up that store of good, a brand that people is ever going to love their bank, but if you can like them a lot, I think that's great. If they think that you're doing good things for not only for them, but in the community through, donation of service, which we do a lot of, and donate financial donations we do. I think building that store of goodwill is a way to really make sure that your brand is protected from some of those negative reviews that are out there. If there's more good than bad, then most people can kind of discern what the truth is and who's just trolling.
Absolutely, great points. When you think about the reach that your brand has, can you give me some more of those data points that you have retained so readily off the top of your head? I mean, how many customers are you guys serving, and give me some of the details as far as the number of branches and locations across the state?
Yeah, we have about 40,000 customers, large majority consumer or savings, sort of checking savings accounts. We do a ton of agriculture business, and we also do a lot of commercial business, specifically commercial real estate here in the Des Moines Metro. Out in the rural regions, we also deal with a lot of manufacturing companies, operations companies, and we're really strong, I think, at helping companies that need to move money. We have a treasury management program I'm pretty excited about, where it's really kind of nerdy, but like all your ACH deposits, and if you need to move a lot of money, you got to make a lot of transactions. We're really set up to help some of the smaller businesses with services they might not get from some of their other banks in the area. And so that's exciting to me. We are in 23 Iowa communities, and we have 26 total locations. Locations range everywhere from West Des Moines here in the Des Moines area, and Johnston and Altoona, kind of household names for people that live in the Des Moines market. But we also have towns like Essex, which I think have 880 people, and Wacoma, which I think was like 250. So really small communities, but the bank in many ways is kind of a strong pillar in those communities, and not just Bank Iowa. I think other community banks do a good job of that as well. But if you need something for the Little League team, or if you want to spur economic development in towns like Clarinda or Shenandoah or Oskaloosa or Pella, people look to the banks to kind of help either finance that or support it in a variety of different ways. And so it's fun. It almost feels like a throwback to when I was growing up in the 80s, and let's pay money for touchdowns and 3-pointers, and the whole community bank spirit is still really alive and well here in Iowa. And I think it's funny coming from Miami, in that huge city that was, to Des Moines, Iowa, which is a really growing and thriving metropolitan area, to still have that need for community support and what it means to be a community banker. Took me a while to kind of figure it out here. If I'm being honest, I didn't get it right away. But when I did and started injecting that into the message, everybody at the bank really, I think, appreciated that and was like, okay, this guy finally gets it.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, and you're absolutely right. There is such an opportunity there to build that sort of community trust through the branding of a bank, and it seems like you've been able to seamlessly execute that. When you partnered with us to do more of the research and analytic evaluation, was that hard to convince your team and to convince the higher up, so to speak, that there's value? Because I know you mentioned, obviously, now you can put your money where your mouth is by showing these data points, but so often companies are wanting to keep everything internal and hesitate to sort of bring in outside partners. And what was the sort of massaged way you could execute that effectively?
Well, I would say bringing in an outside partner was the smartest thing we could have done, because otherwise it's just a new marketing director saying we got to spend all this money here, here, and here. And I needed to know for myself where the best place to spend money was. And without having a brand awareness survey that told us that your brand awareness is in the toilet, yet the good news being that those that do know about you really, really admire you, was what I needed to hear and what needed to happen for the bank. I know that prior to me coming here, there was never really a structured marketing plan. There was no real paid media schedule, and now we're very specific. And if you're the regional president in Humboldt, you can log on to this software we have that says, here's a radio ad that's running 5 times a day, and here's what it sounds like. And down to those sort of details for everybody to know what's happening. If they want to get involved on that level, they can. And so transparency, honesty, a lot of trust. And I haven't mentioned, we are a family-owned bank, which really makes a huge difference, right? And they give us a lot of autonomy and a lot of trust that we're going to do what's best for the bank, and everybody here does that. We always kind of talk in our department, like I got 3 rules. Is it good for the bank? Is it good for the department? And then ultimately that might be good for you personally and professionally. So if it doesn't kind of meet that criteria in that order, we typically don't do it.
I love that. And that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much to Josh Fleming, VP of Marketing with Bank Iowa, based out of Des Moines. And congratulations on all of your marketing success thus far, award-winning campaigns. And we appreciate your time and your insight sharing with us for our LIFTu Live this week.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, I'd love to come back sometime, maybe in a few years. I don't know, if it would be all that fresh to come back next week, but really, really do appreciate you and your questions. And